obviously learning comes first. If you're preparing for the SAT, it's the preparation and the practice that you do that really improves your score. But you need to know these tips, especially test taking tips, to improve your accuracy on questions that you might not know, because you might not have enough time until your next SAT to fully master every topic. So learn a framework that best improves your chances of getting all those questions right, so you don't leave yourself completely in the dark. Because a bulletproof plan not only involves the practice, but it involves like knowing how to encounter kind of questions that you don't know and how to like increase your chances of getting them right by eliminating options, right? And this is how I can claim that you're going to instantly boost your score, because if you don't know these tips and you start applying them, you're going to instantly increase your percentage accuracy on those kind of problems. So hi, I'm Karthik. These are 4 tricks that are going to help you score higher in math. Okay, so a lot of people talk about plugging in points, but there's a very specific way that you have to go about plugging in points, right? And the main idea is that there's 2 main sections, right? There's one to do it to save time, like to cut out a method and do it to save time. But there's also a way that involves plugging in points for non-time reasons, right? Because you don't fully understand the problem. I'm going to explain how to do both in the right way. So plugging in points to save time. So for example, one like problem type in which it's almost optimal to do that is with systems of inequality equations, where you're given 2 graphical equations on a plane and asked to like find a set of points that satisfies them. While you could, you're going to get this on a calculator section, and while you could use the calculator to try to solve it and plot it and try to figure out what points actually go inside all of them, it might be easier, right? And this is due to the nature of the fact that you're going to have 2 variables for both, right? You're going to have like a y and an x, and it's going to be plotting a physical line on a graph, and you could plot them and try to find the intersection, but it might be way easier for you to just plug in the points that are given, right? And find any common points and see if points are aligned, so that you can just plug in one and see if they eliminate multiple answer choices, right? So in that scenario, it's possible to solve it and you know how to solve it, but plugging in points actually helps you save time at getting the right answer. And this is the right way, and the way that you should only be considering plugging in points, right? And so the wrong way, but a way that you can still apply if you don't know the question, is plugging it in for non-time reasons, which is you literally don't know how to solve the problem. So if you didn't know how to solve the problem, you can just plug in points and figure out if it's right. And you can do this for many systems of inequalities, but it takes so much time away from you. So if you got this question and you just don't know how to solve it, I would forget about plugging in points and just going through the rest of the test with all the questions that you do know. And then before you encounter the really, really hard problems where you can't plug in points, I would go into these problems that you can plug in points for and hit those before you go into really difficult problems. Okay. So here's the best guessing framework that I've devised that I used to get my score in SAT math. But on top of that, I just devised it as a way from learning from everyone that I teach, just what's the best way to actually guess, right? And this is specific to SAT math. Don't apply this to any other section. All right. So what you're going to do is you're going to first identify parts you know and you don't know, right? And not specifically about the question itself, but even in the answer choice, right? So identify in the specific problem, what do you understand from this? What can you translate to algebra if it's a word problem? Or what concepts do you understand, and what like methods to solve do you know? And I want you to list them out, and I want you to physically write them on the paper, and I want you to write everything you do know and try to solve for every single little aspect that you do know. And you might find by breaking down the problem like this, you actually figure out how to solve the problem and you do it. And that happens a lot. So breaking down the problem and trying to write it into things that you know and don't know, and then attempting to bridge that gap might actually help you solve the problem. But if you still don't know, what you're going to do is you're going to use those parts and try to eliminate as many choices as possible, right? You're going to try to figure out, from what I do know, what can I guarantee that's going to be incorrect absolutely, right? What am I going to guarantee that's going to always be wrong, right? And this is going to help you actually solve the question better, right? You're going to increase your percentage accuracy on getting questions correct as a result of that, right? You're going to eliminate choices that you know cannot be correct, right? And it has to be certain as a result of something you don't know. And another thing that you can do on top of that is use the differences between your answers and the given numbers to solve for it, right? So use differences like the answer choice, like maybe all the answer choices, they include a certain number, right? Let's say like you didn't know what a certain number was, but all the answer choices have that same number. And that happens in SAT math like pretty often. So what you can do is understand, now that you have that number, switch it back to instead of your don't know and do know, switch it to the do know part of the framework and then plug it in, right? Because now you have an additional piece of information that you do understand and you can plug it in back. So use the differences between the answers as well. So that means like physical differences between all the answer choices and similarities in a way, and group them and figure out if you can identify again with those groups of answers which one is correct and which one is incorrect. So use the way the SAT organizes the questions, the information that they technically give you in the answer choice, and the parts that you do know and don't know to make the best possible guess ever. And you might actually solve the problem with this, right? Every time you get a little bit piece of information that you just like think about and suddenly realize has to be true, reapply the framework and see if you can do it, right? The goal with this is you want to get as much discriminating information as possible. And what I mean by that is information that eliminates the most answer choices, as in like it guarantees that one cannot be correct and you can instantly go to the next one. All right. So in terms of question priority, I already talked about going to the easiest problems and skipping the hardest problems, right? And then going back to the hardest problems, here's how you're going to actually figure that out. You need to actually organize a list of skills for math, and ones that you know and one that you don't know, right? And what you're going to do is on the SAT, you're going to build the ability to recognize those skills, right? What is it testing, and do I know this or do I not know this, right? And all the ones that are easy, I want you to crush instantly. And this is especially true if you're struggling with time, right? And come back later, but also guarantee that all the questions that you said were easy, that you actually got correct and you actually did well, right? And obviously, you need to focus on reviewing those hardest problems. Now that you have your list, right? Actually learn them with the time that you have left. With the time that I'm making this video, and the October SAT is about 2 weeks. So actually focus on doing those hardest problems and trying to learn them. Go on Khan Academy. Go find practice problems of that nature. Go just look it up online, not even referencing an SAT resource, but just a math education source, right? And actually learn those problems. If you do that, you can just eliminate how many hard problems that you have and push them into a medium or easiest category. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, all points on the SAT are the same, right? Everything has equal priority. So why spend time doing a hard problem when you can do an easy problem, right? And with this list, what you're going to do is practice the hard ones and know what to skip, and actually go forth with this. Don't just listen to this, actually do it, because it's really going to help you. All right. So shortcutting. This is like arguably one of the hardest things to really do, but it's going to save you so much time, right? If you struggle with time, accept that it's a basic fact that you're doing some problems with the wrong method. You might be getting the right answer, but you're doing it incorrectly because it's taking you too much time. Admit that fault, right? And here's how to figure that out specifically, right? Take the total number of problems in your section and divide it by the total number of time, and associate time per problem. Because all the SAT problems are not, one is not designed to be like taking 5 minutes and the other ones take like 10 seconds. They're all designed to roughly take the same amount of time. So understand that if you're taking more than that total over problems like time limit, then you're spending more than the allotted time per problem. So you need to figure out a shortcut, or you need to speed up one of your processes. And that either comes from learning better or realizing you've been using the wrong method. And how you figure out if you're using the wrong method is almost extremely difficult to find unless you have someone external, right? Like someone with experience, like a teacher, or you reference Khan Academy on a specific video explaining how to do it the fastest way. Like that's how you're going to be able to find that out. But if you take more than the allotted time for a problem, you know that it's one of the two, and try to figure out if there's a shortcut yourself. Recognize that there might be one, and then figure out what that is. And one thing I can tell you, for almost all of the algebra-based problems and the geometry-based problems in math, like in the SAT, like when they give you anything that you're solving for a specific number, there's almost always a shortcut that can save you so much time. So just keep that in mind. There's almost always a shortcut for those kind of problems. And if you're not using it, and if you're like physically solving for like the variable instead of what they're actually asking you in the answer, you're wasting time, right? That's pretty much it. There's nothing you can really do that can guarantee you take all the shortcuts, but just keep this framework in mind, because shortcutting is so useful, but it's extremely hard to implement, right? and rely on these as a backup to your real efforts. You don't get an 800 just by learning tips and applying them well. What you do get an 800 with is learning all the things that you struggle with and understanding that they are the priority, right? But also, if you know these tips and you're also practicing as much as you possibly can, you're building a bulletproof plan that's actually going to help you reach that score. And also, keep an eye out. I'm going to be releasing a full guide on almost everything you need to know for the SAT, and it's coming tomorrow. So, with that being said, thank you guys so much, and I hope you learned something today.